welcome to the Mind Buffs podcast. I am your host, Matt Mwasak, and we are here for another episode about confidence with Kayla Unrau.
Good morning.
Say hello to the people. Good morning. Hi.
Hi.
We are going to be diving into a lot of research that Kayla did. And so I'm mostly going to be the fanboy that is just amazed at all the work that Kayla did to prepare these episodes, but also really excited to help the audience be able to understand confidence in a way where there's more tangible takeaways to be able to feel like you're more in control of where your confidence is at from day to day. But also, Kayla's also going to kind of be going into detail as to how so many things outside of our control really dictate where our confidence is at from day to day. So yeah, just looking forward to you kind of summarizing where we were at last episode and what to expect for today.
Mm-hmm. So for those of you guys that watched our last episode, this is going to be a quick recap. For those of you that didn't, maybe you could if you had some time.
See link above. Producer Cam, make it work.
So one of the things that I wanted to highlight is this is going to take a while. That was one of the themes that in re-listening to it, and I hope some of you polled that listened to it, is this is going to take a while in the sense of learning how to be confident and learning the parts and pieces that we can put into our everyday life, and also work on through an extended period of time. This is not a quick fix, and some of the things that we give you are not prescriptive. They are things to try. So just stay with us on this journey because it will also be a journey for you.
Totally, because remember, confidence is like the gift. It's like everything that we do / all the things that we can't control, they kind of create confidence. But we're going to really work on the things that we are most in control of and how to sharpen that tool as best as we can.
Absolutely. I want you to think a little bit more today, at least when listening to the episode, of how can I take one of these things that Matt and Kayla are talking about and how can I affect change with it tomorrow? Today is going to be a little bit more of like a performance, traditional sports psych approach because we are talking about self-efficacy, and we'll redefine that if you missed our first episode. But this is something that you do have a little bit more control of in the day-to-day.
This definitely might be an episode where if you actually have time to like sit down and listen and write some notes, because there's gonna be lots of research and a lot of cool like tips and tricks, even in our own sports psych sessions. Like we expect our athletes to come to session with some notebook or at least an app on their phone that they can keep track of some of the things that they're learning. We don't expect you to remember everything in these 30-minute episodes, but yeah, just expect that today is going to have lots of juicy info.
Yeah, for sure. So then the last thing that I wanted to pull apart from our previous episode was there's something called trait confidence and there's something called situational confidence. And we broke those down in depth in our last episode, and we will continue to break them down in depth in today and future episodes. But just to recap for those of you guys that didn't hear, trait confidence is the belief in who I am, the belief in me, right? I think it's like that underlying value system that kind of stays with you regardless of situation. Anything you wanted to add?
That's beautiful.
Thank you. And then situational confidence is more the like day-to-day variance in confidence. So I think about that as like I'm confident in X scenario, so I'm confident when I do this, but I'm not confident when I do that, right? So that kind of like wanes depending on situation.
Yeah, the best example is like I'm really confident when I'm training at my local gym or competing at my local gym, my local golf course, my local rink. But then as soon as it's playoff game or the big tournament, it feels like I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And like that's exactly what that's speaking to.
Exactly. And then the last thing that I wanted to pull apart is that we equate current mental state to confidence. So we were talking about this a little bit last time, is how I'm feeling today depends on if I'm confident or not. And that's something that we're going to talk about today. That's wrong.
Not ideal.
It is incorrect to feel that way. That's it's not incorrect to feel that way, but it's not the strategies that we want to be using in order to work through situational confidence.
Definitely. And you'll hear us use the terms kind of like reactive confidence and proactive confidence. And most people have reactive confidence. If the good things are happening and I've got the good vibes and I'm going to have a good day. And that really just leaves way too much control up to chance, as opposed to realizing that we can generate the confidence that we want regardless of what those initial variables at the start of our day are. So yeah, prepare to learn how.
Sounds good. So what I wanted to talk about first, and as we go through this, help me pull it apart. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, why is our confidence the way it is? Like, why am I sitting here today with 10% confidence in this area, 70, whatever, if you could put numbers on them, right? 70% confidence in my trait confidence, right? Why am I at where I'm at? So there's a lot of variables that contribute to your state and your situational confidence, or your trait and your situational confidence. And they're developed through many years in your life. So that's why we say this is going to take a while. However old you are, took you to get here to create this level of confidence. I don't know why we think that overnight or within 5 sessions with a therapist, we're going to magically feel like we have the confidence to be able to move through anything.
I mean, I appreciate you think that we're that good, but I don't want to get your hopes up. Like, we're very rarely able to achieve that type of life-changing success in like 3 to 5 sessions, although brief therapists would probably state otherwise. I can make permanent change in life in 5. No, it's just going to feel real good for a while.
And I think I could get on that bandwagon if we were talking a little bit more about situational confidence, which is what we're talking about today. But when we come down back to that trait confidence that we were talking about earlier, not so much on the bandwagon.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. So the first thing, and probably one of the things that pops into most head, is childhood experiences. How do childhood experiences create confidence? We could pull this apart for literally years.
Totally.
But we think about it as like parenting styles. So how were the ways that your parents parented you, and or you versus how they parented your sibling? How do those change based on situations and things that they needed at that time and things that your parents had at that time? And how has that developed confidence in you and or you and your siblings?
Totally.
That's varied.
I remember coming out of grad school, and like a lot of like performance focused clinicians, I came to work with like this basket of like brief therapy models that I thought, like, I'm going to fix people in 5 to 10 sessions, and we don't have to worry about the past at all. We're going to be super positive psychology and future oriented, and we don't need to worry about what mom and dad did. Yeah, I think like 2 months in, I was like, oh, yeah.
Just kidding.
Well, that's really important. So yeah, it matters, like whether it was something intentionally taught or done by your parents, or it was like those subliminal messages, or just us modeling after what our parents unknowingly were doing. We have already generated just as an example, a definition of success based on how our parents raised us. And it is critical that we understand like what that is, because that definition, whether we're aware of it or not, is there and is controlling how we perceive ourselves in the world. So yeah, going back to the beginning is where it all starts.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not something that we can really pull apart today.
Nope.
But it is a list. It is part of the list that I want you to just be aware of when you're thinking through this. 2 other pieces, and like we said, there's many that go into childhood, but there's also any traumas, big traumas that happened in your life can affect confidence, specifically how they're managed and how you're supported through them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also any experiences with bullying, harassment, humiliation. I think we talk a lot to our clients about these things of having this experience when I was in grade 5 and it should be fine and it's over with. But your little brain has categorized that in such a way that now it is carrying through in situations, either situationally confidence or like that internal view of yourself. So just be aware and gentle with yourself that those things do affect you.
Definitely. I mean, if you have seen Inside Out movies, just imagine that, near the end of both of those films, that little girl didn't get the support she needed from her friends and family. I would say most of us probably have had similar experiences as that character in the film, but without the support needed. So imagine what would happen if like that character goes through all of that struggle alone and isolated and tries to just figure it out on her own. Her brain's going to come up with some pretty fancy ways to keep her safe and keep her okay and pretend that things are fine. And again, if you haven't seen those movies, it is like one of the best ways to learn about the complexity of the brain. It actually is done really well. So I would encourage to watch that.
Moving on, poor feedback. And support, kind of what you're just talking about, in performance-based endeavors, but I think also everyday endeavors in your life, right? So how you have tried and failed and how that has or has not been supported, and if that support was helpful or unhelpful to you based on who you are as a human, because that also matters, right? So that trickles into there too.
Totally. Who was like the person in your life that provided like the best like feedback, whether it was like a family or a coach or a teammate?
Probably, I look at it from different perspectives, but performance-based endeavors, there was a lot of like realistic reflection from my dad. Yeah. That was something that was really reflected. There was also a few teachers that I can remember in my life that were really good at giving me that feedback. And we're going to talk about it in a little bit. Cool. Maybe we can pull that into pieces. But it's why were they good at giving that feedback? Yeah.
Cool.
How about you?
Feedback was limited growing up. I think obviously if my parents could do it all over again, they would, be more educated to like know how to have like provided that kind of like feedback, but just kind of where both they came from. Feelings, we don't talk about feelings. So like I understand that. I would say it was actually like peers. Like I remember some moments as a teenager where friends were telling me things that I hadn't really heard about myself before, or complimenting me or telling me about things I was good at that I'd never really thought of before. I remember around 16, 17, like my self-image really changed because I had friends who were really providing me with a different narrative than the one that I had been playing in my mind. So, and, even if you were to ask me like how I got to where I am today as a business owner, and I would say largely I was really lucky in having amazing friends that provided me with that feedback. So I know that's not something that most people get. So I would definitely say some close friends.
Okay. Three other pieces that I'm going to say quickly, and you can pick which one you want to talk about. On ongoing life stressors and how we manage them. Relates back to confidence, genetics. Interestingly, we talk about this when we do personality assessments or any of those types of things at our office and or with corporations. There is a significant chunk of your personality traits that relate to how confident you will be in certain situations.
Yeah. Sorry to say, but it's true.
Yeah. That doesn't mean you can't work on it.
Nope.
Matt and I have probably the exact opposite personality. And I think we just have to have different strategies to move through that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the last piece is just our world is difficult and it's changing all of the time and you are forced to adapt all of the time and there's new ways and things to think about. So you're constantly having to navigate new scenarios.
Yeah, that just reminded me of, I'm watching the Serena Williams documentary right now I think it's on Prime. And the amount of times that she actually had to reinvent herself or change the way that she prepared and trained as an athlete, I didn't realize, because we see Serena that most of her life, she's like number one. But it was the moments in where either she thought that she figured it out or huge life stressors like completely changed her body that she had to learn different ways to be able to find that confidence again. So it's, to Kayla's point, it's not a thing that you get to where you discover it and then it's permanent for the rest of your life. It is a constant moving target.
Yep.
And that's why it can feel frustrating if you've accidentally told yourself like, I've done it, I've figured it out, I know how to be confident. No.
It's almost like leveling up though, right? Isn't it? Is that then you're at the next level and you recognize, oh, there's a lot of spaces that I don't have it again.
Yeah.
So it's just that constant like movement towards. And I think that's positive because that creates that like internal reward dopamine system of like, okay, I recognize that I'm still working towards this and I always will be, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and I can say that because we're addicted to that kind of shit. But a lot of people struggle with that notion of like, oh, I can't wait to like learn the new thing. Like,
well, I imagine if you're listening to this podcast, you will be closer to our end of the spectrum.
I would hope so.
Yeah. Okay. So today we're going to talk about self-efficacy. Last time we talked about self-esteem, self-efficacy. How I tried to create a formula within confidence was a bunch of bullshit.
Good effort though.
Because it doesn't exactly exist.
Yeah.
But self-efficacy, for those that weren't listening or forget because that happens, is what we are most in control of to increase the chance that we trust ourselves in different situations. So I think about this, we already explained it, but it's how can I control what I can control going into different situations? And it doesn't have to be vastly different, like you said, Matt. It can be practicing on the driving range versus actually on the course. It can be practicing throwing versus practicing like a pivot, right? Like it's within the same realm, but it's situationally different. Right?
Yeah.
Makes sense? Okay.
I'm with you.
So today we're going to develop our skill tree. We love a skill tree because these are actionable items that you can take and use. So for those of you guys that have been sitting, listening to us, waiting, just give me something to do. We're going to give you that today, but we're also going to push the buttons of maybe we won't give you something to do and maybe that's good for you. Right?
Bring it on.
Okay. So the model that I wanted to outline for you is a very old model. Well, it's younger than I am, 1997. So not as old. But Bandura proposed this model that has 4 parts to self-efficacy. Okay. The first one is mastery of experience. The second one is vicarious experience. The third one is verbal persuasion. And the last one is physiological, affective, and emotional states.
Okay. I mean, I already have so many questions about what half of those even mean, but yeah, let's get going. I'm excited what this theory shares. Yeah.
I'm going to define each of them quickly, and then I'm going to ask you to do something.
Ooh, me?
Yeah,
okay.
and everyone, hopefully that's listening if you're willing to play along with us. I'm going to ask you to think about the importance of each of these in your situational confidence.
Okay.
So if you could make a change to one of these, how much would it help you, right? So kind of rank them for yourself, 1 through 4.
1 through
okay.
4.
So let me define them first and then I'll repeat them.
Okay.
So mastery of experience is information about successes, but also failures. So I've tried something and I've gathered information, whether I succeeded or I failed. So did that experience help me create self-efficacy towards confidence, right? Vicarious experience is learning through observation.
Right.
Okay. So watching someone else go through the experience or similar experience as to what you're about to go through. Okay.
Yep.
Verbal persuasion is convincing people about their capabilities. A lot of this is talked about in third person, so like coaches or peers. But I also think about it in relation to like self-talk, internal self-talk.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then physiological, affective, and emotional states. So what information am I getting about an experience? Am I tired today? Am I fatigued today? That's your physiological and affective. Or emotional states. Am I anxious going into this? That help determine if you have confidence in that scenario.
Okay.
So which of those 4 do you feel like, rank them, that you feel can create the most change in your confidence if you tinkered with it per se?
If I tinker with it, I would definitely say the persuasive like conversation.
Okay.
It would be more like
the verbal persuasion.
Yeah, the verbal persuasion.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. And again, I'm a sports psych and I know all the things, but I know because of like where I came from and my like 15-year experience with sport, like as a young person, I still have a lot of like negative like self-talk. So if that was something I was able to change, I would probably see the biggest improvement in like consistency and confidence if that were to improve. I think it's not even close.
You're talking about the internal piece of it, not so much the third party.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would be the least effective for you?
The least effective
that you think
would probably be the first one, the
mastery of experience.
Yeah, mastery of experience. I think that I get caught up in trying to be too binary and dichotomous with whether or not like the experience was good or bad or a success or a failure. I think honestly, if I put that at the bottom of the list as like, okay, I'm going to spend a few intentional moments myself to be like, is that a performance I want to replicate or not? Like I still see the value in it, but yeah, I'd probably see that one would be like the least.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Most of the literature points to mastery of experience for most people is the most effective area of change. So you're different.
I just think it's the most volatile.
Yeah.
Because obviously if you win at something or if you're better than other people in a particular moment, that's going to be very validating to be like, oh my goodness, I'm so good. But I find like in sport and in life, things change so quickly that if I were to like measure my level of confidence based off of just that, it would be the most inconsistent type of confidence.
Yeah. And I think it's important to highlight here, this is where some of the things have overlap, because I also look at mastery of experience, information about successes and failure. Can I not adjust the information that I am receiving from that situation? Can I reframe it?
Yeah.
Right? So can that be a part of the mastery experience, or is that more part of the verbal persuasion, or is there just a beautiful, nice Venn diagram of 4 circles that overlap? Who knows? Bendera.
That sounds more like life, but yeah, theories like to sometimes pretend that things are like separate from one another. But yeah, I know you and I will be showing how they're interconnected.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time thinking about which of these would be the most impactful for me. And I think that my desire to be very goal-driven and very like next step, told me that mastery of experiences is the most important for me. But reflecting on who I am as a person and the very perceptive way that I have of moving through the world. So those of you guys, if you know your personality type, your INFJs, if you're out there with me, physiological and affective states. So the physical and emotional feedback and what I am doing with that is likely the most impactful part. How I am feeling my feelings is when I really sit down and think about it, probably the most important area.
Yeah, I would say any type of more intuitive, like feeling-based person would probably connect with that. Any like neurodiverse person would probably intensely connect with like how I'm feeling is how I will think or act confidently or not. And I don't know what you think, but that's probably the most complicated one of all of them.
100%. That one takes many years of work to work through, to be able to create this awareness, but not like, I don't know, like combining yourself with that feeling, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's where like this is a really common piece of psychoeducation that therapists like to share is like, I am not my thoughts or feelings. Because, I mean, well, my thoughts and feelings are inside of me, therefore they are me. So how can I not feel like completely swept up or consumed by them? Because like that is the experience. Like you can go on and on down that rabbit trail and feel very not good. But it's important to realize that thoughts and feelings are, I don't want to say fully randomly, but they are generated by different parts of self depending on the situation. So we don't control what thoughts and feelings are happening. It's more like, do we want to listen to that thought or feeling? Is there value in that thought or feeling? Or perhaps is there like a different part of who we are that might be a better advisor in the current situation? And even there, like the complexity of what I just said of like parts, like how many, do we have multiple personalities? What's happening? Is this complex?
It is. And I hope to be able to give those as pieces through as we work through this. But let's move on.
Yes.
And then we will come back to this conversation because it is part of the conversation. Okay. So the first one we're going to talk about is mastery of experience. So the way that we're going to lay this out is Matt and I are probably going to have a little bit of a conversation about what is mastery of experience, what parts kind of build into it. And then we're going to talk about what are some of the more tangible based skills that you can add to your skill tree. So like Matt said, if you have a piece of paper handy, or if some way of being able to record this, things that you already do, things that you want to work on can be a helpful way to view it.
Okay. Sweet. I already have a good example to like go through the skill tree of this one, but please educate us.
Okay. So like we said, mastery experience is past experiences of success are thought to be a powerful source of self-efficacy. Okay. So satisfaction with your performance increases feelings of mastery. So if I'm satisfied with my performance, not did I win or lose, if I'm satisfied with my performance, then it kind of says, okay, I feel confident in that area. I can start to create some self-efficacy in that specific skill.
Right.
Okay. One of the articles that I was actually pulling apart was looking at, and this really spoke to me, for those of you guys that don't know, I used to be a teacher. And one of the articles that I was reading through was talking about each one of these pieces of Bandura's theory in student teachers.
Okay.
And them developing self-efficacy and the skill of teaching. Okay. And they also were comparing it to seasoned teachers. And one of the things that they were pulling apart in mastery that I think is important to highlight is that years of experience do not equate mastery and experience. Right? A lot of people think this person has been doing this for 20 years. They must be really good at it. But it's how have they moved through that skill for the last 20 years?
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So when I think about all of the parts of mastery, one of the theories that pops into my brain is, we're about to get a little bit nerdy, is the zone of proximal development.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to explain this one?
The zone of proximal development, speaking of the English, is, correct me if I'm wrong, is the kind of like the potential, the learning potential of the individual based on where they're at, like developmentally.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
What I can do individually versus what I can do as support.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So I think a lot of this theory, we think back to like children, but you also look at it in relation to like, am I getting consistent support from my coach? Am I getting consistent support from my supervisor or my peers to be able to complete this task?
Totally. I mean, this is why school and sport is so difficult, because as the teacher or as the coach, like, you are a finite resource and you're trying your best to be able to like help every young child on your team be able to increase their self-efficacy. But based on this theory of zone of proximal development, every kid is on a different level in terms of what they're even capable of being able to understand and incorporate in their life. So this theory is important to realize that you can't expect that everyone is going to be able to learn the same, excel the same, improve in the same way, because everyone has different limitations or different capabilities based on where they're at in life. So
exactly.
Really important.
And I think what kind of hit me when I was looking through this theory is how many of you honestly sit down when you're in a situation where maybe you're trying to develop a little bit more confidence, whether it's in a sport or if it's in presenting skills or whatever it may be, and you say, here's where I'm at. This is what I can do independently, and I know that I can do it consistently independently. And this is the direction that I want to go. And where is the area that I should be focusing today, this week, this month? That is just a little bit of a stretch between those two.
But I want to be good at everything and like good at it now.
Yes.
How do I do that, Kayla?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I can do that for you, Matt. But I think a lot of the times we miss the very basic steps to giving ourselves the platform to be able to develop confidence. We are looking at where we are supposed to be, process versus outcome goal setting. But we negate to assess, like, where is my skill set today? And what are the areas that I still need support with? And am I expecting myself to be confident in the areas that I still need support in?
Yeah.
So really think about where is the area that I think that I can start to develop that confidence in, maybe with a little bit of scaffolding of support, but mostly on my own. Take that step.
Totally. And something that people want to pretend that they can do is to compartmentalize certain stressors in their life, but those very stressors are taking some of that potential and bandwidth away from you. So that needs to be part of your internal assessment of like, what am I actually capable of achieving right now or being able to work on? Because a lot of people think that they can ignore that or keep parts of their life separate from one another. It's not a thing. Like, people can't do that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Be nice though.
I know.
Right.
Compartmentalization. I hate that word.
Yeah.
It's an illusion.
It's a very alluring illusion, right? And one of the words that I just pulled out in there is the word scaffolding, right? And so that's the process of figuring out where in that zone of proximal development you will be. So it's goal setting, really breaking down where you're at and where you want to be, and giving yourself a realistic area to start practicing the skills to feel situationally confident.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you've never public spoke before, I mean, we could flood you and throw you into a room of 500 people. And some psychologists and theories may argue that that's a great way of getting over that fear. But I think for the sake of developing confidence, look where you're at, where you want to be, what is the next step that I'm going to push myself? You can do hard things.
Yeah.
Right? So think about where that area is to give yourself a fighting chance.
Yeah.
I just have this image of me going out and trying to run an Ironman right now. And I'm laughing a little bit because part of me feels like I should be able to do it, right? Like that's the goal. That's where I should be able to be.
Yeah.
But man, would I lose situational confidence pretty damn quick.
So quick.
I didn't make it through the swim, but the bike.
Yeah.
All right. So I know Matt's really going to want to sink his teeth into this one. And I fear that this will not be fully pulled apart today and it will be a separate episode. And I'll just give you the sentence and see where you go with it.
Okay.
The power of overcoming challenge and adversity.
Okay. Yes, that's complicated. Yeah, I mean, that's why cold plunges are such a thing right now, is because we're trying to artificially improve our ability to handle adversity, because it's typically the shock of like, oh my God, this is super uncomfortable, that most people back away or don't push through that discomfort. So is there anything in your life that is actually difficult or challenging that you're learning how to be in less than ideal situations and know and trust that you'll be okay regardless? And because of how comfortable Western society is now, we're almost completely devoid of that organically in life. We have to like chase after it and pursue that on an individual level. I mean, that's also why sport is fantastic, because it's naturally built into that system. But for those that aren't kinesthetically inclined, like, well, what are you doing, or what opportunities are you giving your kid to learn adversity in that kind of way? Yeah, I could go on forever.
Yeah. And I think when you look at each one of those cultures, like a sport culture or a like an art-based culture, within each of those, I think there's subcultures of individuals that are consistently trying to put themselves in situations that are adverse and challenge them.
Yeah.
And there are subcultures that are very supportive of avoidance.
Totally. Like, I even thinking about the fine art industry, we had Megan Dart, who was the executive director of the Fringe Festival, as one of our guests a few episodes ago. And I remember in the interview, I just kept getting these vibes of like, man, this girl has had consistent experiences in life of like going through hard things. Like, did she play sport growing up? And like when I asked, she's like, oh yeah, I was like a high level cheerleader, and I did this and that. I was like, okay, that makes total sense, because I know that a lot of artists that I've run into, they've kind of hyperfixated their identity on just that part of their life. And unfortunately, the kind of culture that's in a lot of those spaces is more toxic than positive. So it's a really scary and not constructively, not a place where constructive feedback is given in a positive way, more like in a negatively competitive kind of way. So yeah, what am I doing other than my craft that's helping me feel more confident through adversity?
Yeah. And I think this comes down to a little bit more of that. There's a piece further down that we're going to talk about this in the verbal persuasion piece, but am I aligning myself within my subcultures that create that desire for a challenge, that create that desire for adversity? Am I finding the people that are putting me in a situation that propel me towards that?
Hell yeah. Or am I in a group of friends where we're still living our best high school days, or we just support and say, you go get her, girl, no matter how awful the thing they're about to do.
Boo.
Yeah. Like, you live your truth. You got it. Like, no, we need to be able to say, are you sure?
Yeah.
So that's a sign of a good friend. A good friend says those things in a loving way, not in a judgmental way.
Yeah. And I think about, I've hand selected my friendships now, I think, over the years.
Definitely.
And I think about those that I hold closest to me are the people that create the most discomfort for me in some of those difficult conversations. And I know they do it with a point of love and support, but it's not just this consistent, yep, you're right, you got this, do it this way. I kind of almost feel like they're like nudging me out the door to an area that I don't really want to be in.
Yeah. And yeah, for those listening who are neurodiverse, the challenge and adversity part, it is going to be more difficult for you. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Your internal activation level is so much higher than less sensitive people. And so when you're doing something difficult or challenging, it feels so much more difficult than a neurotypical person. So that's not to say that, like, do easier things in life so that you feel less discomfort, but you need to be more diligent in incorporating adversity in your life in a more like consistent way, so that it doesn't always feel like a shock to the system when you do come across adversity. So just make it a normal part of your life, because we are just a part of nature, and nature's hard. Nature's real gritty, and it's not fun all the time. So we can't separate ourselves fully from that type of ecosystem that we're a part of. Find a way to make adversity just a normal part of your life.
Absolutely. It's a good way to put it. So if we were to deliver you a handset skills, or like a set of skills that you could take away from this to put into your skill tree, the first one that I'm going to reflect that Matt was just talking about much more eloquently than I'm going to say it is avoid avoidance.
I love that.
Right? So recognizing when you are avoiding discomfort and creating strategies to be able to move towards whatever it is you're avoiding.
Totally. I mean, we know our man Cam behind the desk there, our producer, that loves adversity because he's about to have his 6 kids. So we can probably learn a thing or two about how they just eagerly await the opportunity for more challenge. Isn't that right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's where we can insert in the things that we have talked about so far, our zone of proximal development, our scaffolding processes. That's goal setting. That is breaking things down into tangible bits. Where am I at today? Where do I need to be? It is astonishing to me. I was having a conversation with my partner about this, how in high-level sport, people still don't do this.
Oh, yeah.
You're an adult in high-level sport. You goal set on your own, don't you? And it's quite interesting how many people actually don't go through this process with the amount of diligence that they need to.
Totally. Even just the amount of professional athletes that I have talked to and been like really excited to like get to know and like ask questions and been like, yeah, like essentially my mindset being like, what did you do to be able to like overcome all of the challenges in your career to get to the highest stage? And realizing that a lot of people are so gifted that they actually didn't have to do a whole lot to get to the highest stage. And I think that's important to note, just how much luck is involved here, of like, I happened to pick the perfect sport for my genetic gifts and had a really fantastic team of people to support me on that journey. I'm not talking about like, oh, that person was so privileged. Like, no, there was a lot of luck involved. And that's why you also hear stories of the professional athlete that's like, I know I didn't have those gifts and I had to work a lot harder than other people. So maybe you're that person that if the goal is that important to you, you have to make more sacrifices than other people. Just don't sacrifice the people along the way. But yeah, man, genetics, luck, there's so much of it is a part of that.
Right?
Yeah.
Just reflecting back, like really important words that we would use in any basic goal setting session. Is it realistic? Where am I starting today relative to where I'm at? Right? So really thinking about all of those parts and pieces before you start to like full throttle to the end of it, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are guilty of that, of not creating awareness first about realistic evaluations of self and where I am in this moment.
And I think it's also fair to say that we can never be fully freed of our own biases. So oftentimes to set really realistic goals, you need to include someone else in the creation of that goal. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to create a little bit more, not awareness, but a little bit more like normalcy around this, is I'm writing a big exam for licensing for psychology. And I was speaking with my supervisor about it. And I was really on my heels about not doing some of the basic goal setting things that I know inside and out, right? So if it's something that you're not doing, I think it's normal to just kind of think about the outcome and think about the things that you need to do day to day. So just spend some time being aware of that.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Okay. We're moving on to the next one.
Okay.
Vicarious experience. This one was the least researched.
Really?
Yeah, it was the least researched. And I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on it.
I have many.
Vicarious experience would be, to like paint a picture for you back to the student teaching experience, would be the student teacher watching an experienced teacher move through a classroom.
Yeah.
So watching the things that they do, the skills that this individual wants to develop. Okay. So you are picking a model that is doing the area in which you would like to create that self-efficacy or the situational confidence in. So you're observing or practicing that individual going through game-like situations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. The key to this is finding somebody that has similar traits to you.
Oh.
Go for it.
No, I'm just so excited. Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
Okay. So finding someone that has similar traits to you, skill level, age, ability, history, how like are they to you? Am I looking at a model of what I want to do and it's in sport and that person is 6'5"? Well, sorry to say, Kayla, but you ain't going to cut it at 5'2". So are you picking the appropriate person to view these vicarious experiences through?
Be very careful when reading autobiographical books about how that person came to great success. Be very, very careful. When you read those books, you need to step back with a filter of like, this is how this person found success for them based on the variables that were in their life. There are too many people that sell their books as this is how everyone can be successful. And also a lot of people that read those books looking for that one book that spells out success perfectly for them. It does not exist. There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all success model for how to get to the top. So be very careful when reading those books.
And that reflects back to why we are unwilling to give you an equation to confidence.
Yeah.
Because my model is not your model, and your model is not Cam's model, and Cam's model is not the viewers or the listeners' model. So being really aware of who in your life you're selecting to hold those roles for you. And also being aware to not make one or two people hold all of the power.
Yeah.
I want to be like Matt in this area because we have similarities here, and this is where I think I can grow and develop. But that model won't hold true for other areas of my life.
Yeah. I'm really surprised that there isn't as much research for the vicarious part, because we actually have tons of research when it comes to childhood development. Like the first study that came to my mind is looking at young children, I think between the ages of like 4 and 7, that, had a play kitchen and a playhouse and like practice being like mini adults, as opposed to like kids that like didn't have that. And we look at, as those kids like got older, the ones who played pretend adults, who played pretend mom, pretend dad, pretend like cooking, they were able to develop those skills with much more ease, or just purely develop those skills, as opposed to the control group that didn't model their play after their parents. So we know like there is a huge part of our minds that can simply learn by watching. I even remember when my wife was starting to pick up golf. She's like a really fantastic rock climber, and that's kind of the only sport that she does now. But early on when she was taking lessons, she just couldn't figure out her driver. It just wasn't working. And we were watching The Greatest Game on Earth with, I think that's what it's called, the Shia LaBeouf like golf movie. And there was like a slow motion video of one of his swings in the film. And all of a sudden Holly's like, oh my goodness, I understand that. I get it. And we went to the range. I can't remember if it was like that night or the next day. And yeah, her body's like, I got this. I know how to swing the club.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really important.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about either, is even in movement patterns, right? Like if you're breaking down something as a coach for athletes, of how each individual athlete is going to need to be able to see it in a different way done, right?
Yeah, that's why I love all of the sport documentaries right now, because they're really highlighting how a lot of these athletes are mentally and emotionally preparing for their games so that they can be at that level of confidence that they want to be at. And, obviously you would use different language, but I really think of like Kittle with the San Francisco 49ers. If you haven't seen the Receivers documentary, oh my God, he's a beautiful human being. His like pregame mental talk is the best I have ever seen. I can confidently say like it's the best I've ever seen. And I think everyone could learn from just watching what he does and what he says to himself, and like start to feel your own confidence increasing as you're observing that. So as an experiment, I would highly recommend that everyone watch. It's one of the last episodes. It's either the last or second last, where it shows kind of Kittle's internal world and what he says to himself. Whew. Yeah, that'll hype you up.
Super powerful to be able to like view that experience and say, like you're practicing, right?
Yeah.
We think about the neural circuits that are going on in our brain while we are watching, while we are visualizing, when we are going through those processes. If it's something that we've done before, a lot of my athletes don't believe when I say this, but it is like you are physically doing it.
Totally.
Right? The same pathways are firing in your brain for a known or understood skill.
If your visualization incorporates all 5 of your senses.
Yes.
Most people limit visualizations to the visual. Just throw that in there. But yes, you are correct.
Thank you.
Jeez, they're so smart.
Thanks. Did my research. I reflect this also back into creating awareness around, I think a lot of people nowadays use social media as a platform for picking and choosing people to see these vicarious experiences through, and being really careful about how you're curating that consistently viewed device or like whatever it is you're using, right? But being really aware of the type of people and the type of experiences and the models that you're choosing to help propel you in the direction that you want to go. I think a lot of the time we're not choosing models that are going to be helpful for us in being able to take actionable skills. We're choosing models that are more helpful for us to feeling like we failed or that we're not good enough or that why can't I do it because they can.
Yeah. I remember I tried to reset my Instagram because I really hated what the algorithm had done over like a year or two span. And like, you can't. Like it would feel like a job to try to reset your social media to like be following the right people and looking at the right things. I think I even attempted to use a different email address and like create a new account, but it had like all this existing data because it still knew that it was like me. It's disgusting. It's gross. So be really careful how you curate your social media.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that you want to talk about with vicarious experiences?
I think, there was a memory that came to my mind as an athlete where I feel like I would always get shit on by coaches if we were doing like a new drill in practice, especially in tryout. I remember like just shaking in my boots because I needed to always watch a few people do the drill before I could understand what I was supposed to do.
Experience, yeah.
And if for coaches out there, like this is like a 15% chance that you just explaining the drill like through words alone is going to have success, and yet you're just berating your athletes for not getting the drill right. There needs to be enough visual vicarious learning before a lot of athletes can be able to do the thing. And I just think of all of the unnecessary shitty experiences I had because of being put in that situation.
Yeah, I reflect that to teaching too, right? Specifically working with neurodiverse kids, right? Anyone that has ADHD in your classroom, they literally did not hear you. It's very likely that when they ask you to repeat it, they actually don't know what was said, or they heard a part of it, but it's not a schema or like it's not a process in their brain that they've developed, right? Think about this as like a business owner or any sort of leader. How are you creating those vicarious experiences for the individuals that you want to lead to develop skills in a certain area?
Totally.
So Matt and I got a little carried away in this episode, and we're going to have to end it and make it a 2-part series. So stick with us and you can hear about the rest of Bandura's theory in our part 2 of this episode.